Welcome to Farm Fresh Designs 59. Today's project is using the Iron Orchid Designs Floral Anthology transfer. I'm doing 3 different pieces and I'm also doing something extra at the end. This is a wood lap desk that I found at Goodwill for $7 and it is super heavy. I believe it might be oak. And so I'm going to paint the outside, the sides of the box, and the bottom of the box, but I'm not going to paint the inside. But once I finish the project, tell me, would you paint the inside? I've actually thought about it and maybe adding some scripture to the inside cover. Let me know what you think. So I'm getting it all painted, and then what I really like about transfers is that you can cut them up and piece them together, and it's quite amazing. They just all fit together so well, just so seamlessly, that if somebody was to look at it who wasn't used to looking at transfers, they would just think that all of those pieces were put together right there in the book. But that's what I really like about especially the IOD transfers, is they're so big and so large and they just all go together. And so this is on the front of the lap desk. And then I go and I use a larger stamp from IC Paris by Redesign with Prima. And it's just put it right there in the corner, and I think it looks really pretty. The next project is a wooden tote. Now on this piece, I am painting the outside and on the inside, and even the handle. I'm just painting the whole thing. And then I'm going to be putting some transfers on it, and I'm putting some stamps on it. So the first side is a more of a dark purple or pink floral, and it's actually one piece that I've kind of cut apart, and it made it look like 2 stems. And on the other side is a different piece of that transfer, and it's a more of a white flower. And even those stems don't really go with that flower, but when you piece them together, they all just go together so seamlessly, and I just think it's beautiful. And the stamps that I'm using are also from the IC Paris stamp set. And I really like this stamp set. I know Lisa from Our Shabby Cottage uses it a lot because it has such a good mix of stamps. It has words and it has different pictures. It has some French looking labels on it. It's just a perfect stamp if you like that type of stamp that you would use for all kind of projects. Now, when I put that transfer down, I scraped it just a little bit too much, and so it kind of pulled the paint off. So what I'm doing is I'm going back and kind of touching up that paint that I did. And so would you have put the same color transfer on both sides, or is it okay that maybe one side is white and one side is the darker pink? And I also put some stamps on the side, and I didn't use the same stamp on both sides. So are you someone that likes the same stamp on both ends, or do you like to mix it up? I tend to like to kind of mix it up because that way when you're looking at it, and then when you walk around to the side of it, you're like, oh my goodness, well look at that. That's just a little bit different. And I think it just adds a lot of extra detail to it, and it just makes it look more unique if it's not all the same. So look at those stamps. Oh, and you know, if you've been watching my videos, that I love IOD Stone Gray ink. I love that color the most because it's so subtle. Now, I'm also putting a mold up at the top. And this is an IOD mold, and it's the Lock and Key. And now on this one, I'm using the same mold on both sides of the handle because this one is more of a long skinny one, and it fits that handle really well. And I use DAS clay or DAS clay. I'm not sure, it's DAS. And when I use my clay, when I get that package, I go on and put it in a gallon Ziploc freezer bag, and I make sure I keep it closed really tight so that it doesn't dry out. And then I use old gift cards to kind of clean up that mold. When I first put it in, I push it down with my thumb, but then I go back and push it down with a gift card that I don't use anymore. But this one's long and skinny, And so I have to be really careful so that I don't push down too hard, and then that mold kind of pops up a little bit. So I'm going really easy on it with a really light touch on that gift card. And I like this one a lot. And remember, the IOD molds have that little lip on it. So when you do scrape it down and try to get it real flat, it's less likely to pull up. And I put it up there on the handle. And I'm going to paint it white. And then at the end, I'm going to use some Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain to add a little bit of extra oomph to it. And I also distress the edges. Now see how I'm putting the blue painter's tape on it? That one has been sitting on there for just a little while, and I used Titebond glue. But because I'm impatient, and I didn't want to wait until that one dried completely, then I used some painter's tape and I put it on real easy. And then I can go ahead and put the other mold on the other side. Now this is a basket that I'm going to finish up. I did eventually paint the entire basket, both the inside and the outside. Now, this is going to be a longer portion of it because I want to make sure that you can see exactly what I'm doing. So this is a piece of drop cloth. And, you know, you can go and buy drop cloth at Walmart or any of the hardware stores. Make sure when you get it, go ahead and wash it and put it in the dryer and make it really soft. And this is how you cut the different pieces. You don't cut it. What you do is the edges will become frayed, and then it's raveled. So when you're looking at it, that ravel part, you can see the individual threads. So you take one of those threads and you begin to pull it really easy. So kind of watch as I do that. I've started a thread, and I'm going to pull that thread very slowly and pinch it here and pinch it, keep on pinching it back until it pulls a thread all the way across, and then it's got a straight line for me to cut it. This is a picture of the front of that transfer book. Oh my goodness, look at all those beautiful flowers. But what I really like about it is, for some reason in my mind, it looks like something I would have cross-stitched. So were you one of those people back in the 80s that did a lot of cross-stitch? I did. That was probably the only art that I had in my home. I also didn't have children at the time, so I did cross-stitch a lot. So let's talk about putting a transfer on fabric. It really is so easy, and it goes on so well. And the one thing about putting a transfer on fabric is that you need to push it in pretty hard because it's a surface that's a little bit softer than wood. But remember, when you push it on and you pull it up, just make sure that you pull it up easy so you can go back and if some of the pieces didn't adhere. And on this piece right here, I am dabbing on some Tim Holtz Distress ink. And I did the edges at first, and then I thought, I think I'll probably put a little bit more ink on the inside part too. So I did. And I think I used just a little bit of stamping on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it to the front of the basket with Titebond glue, and I just leave it laying on its side, and then just let it dry. And that Titebond glue, it's going to stay on there. It's not going to come off. Now, on one of my videos, I talked about amazing casting resin. So I want to show you exactly how to use it here. There's two parts to it. There's a part A and a part B. If you use the IOD molds, it will tell you, excuse me, down in one corner, how much you need to actually use for that particular mold. So you use part A and part B. You need to be ready to stir it right away. And now this amazing casting resin, I've had it for a pretty good while, so it's kind of yellowy looking, but the more you stir it, it will turn clear. But you have to stir it pretty quick. Once it becomes clear, you need to be ready to pour it in the molds. And pour it really, really easy into the molds. It spreads out faster than you would think. But if you'll notice, I have some little Q-tips right there beside me. Because if you're using an IOD mold and it's got a lip on the side, it's not going to pour into the mold quite as fast. But I have used other molds to pour resin in. And the reason I have those Q-tips is because if it does pour out on the side, then I can dab it with the Q-tip to kind of pull that up. If you use air dry clay and it kind of pulls off and there's a little extra on the side, then you can just use a wet paintbrush to kind of clean it up. But with resin, once it gets dry in 10 minutes, you can't clean it up with something like that. It's going to be really hard. So it's easier to go ahead and clean it up in the beginning with like a Q-tip if it does come out on the side. And I always make just a little bit too much, so I try to use it in as many little things as I can because I don't want to waste any of that. You can buy it at Hobby Lobby, and for the box, it's I think $17.99 right now, and it's actually cheaper than if you buy it on Amazon. But I'm not going to waste any of it. So there's one more little flower on this mold. It's the IOD Rosettes mold. And even though this little rosette that I'm going to be making is going to be thinner, I'm still going to save it. But I'm using a popsicle stick to kind of push it to the side so it'll come out really good. And right here, I'm actually showing you how I would use a Q-tip to kind of dab around the edges if I needed to. And even though I have used it many, many times, sometimes I might just have a heavy hand and it will pour out on the sides, and I don't want it to. And see how quickly it's setting up. It sets up super fast, and in 10 minutes, it's ready to pop out. So the reason I'm making this resin is because I messed up. I made a boo-boo. I did a transfer onto the drop cloth, and I put some stamps on it, and I used too many stamps. I was so mad at myself, and so it just didn't look right. So I decided I would make a lapel pin. I used to wear those a lot back in the 80s and 90s. We would wear scarves with a lapel pin, and I still have some. Were you one of those women who used to wear scarves with lapel pins? So what I'm going to do with this resin, because it's so hard, is I'm just going to glue it on there, and I push it into that resin because remember, it's super hard, and I'll let it set for a little while. And then once it's dry, to be able to get that detail to show up, then I brush, like dry brush white paint over it just a little bit. And then I dry brush some gold. It is called, let's see, it's called Golden Rule. And it is like a glaze, gilding wax. I'm sorry. Kind of brush that on. And then I'm taking another piece of drop cloth and I'm going to glue it to the back. And then yesterday I went to Joann's Fabrics and I got some of those little pins that you would glue onto the back of a pin so that it opens and closes. And I turned it into a little lapel pin. And so it matches the other pieces that I've done today, but I just didn't want to waste that drop cloth that had the transfer on it that I messed up. But think about it. Isn't that a neat gift to make people? To use resin in a mold and then put transfers on it in some way and then put like a little pin on it. How stinking cute is that? Tell me, do you like it, or you're like, oh, good gracious, Myra, you're really stretching it this time. But do you like it? I think I like it, but the concept is more what I like, is that I would be able to make my own pins. And also, in case I forget to tell you as it gets closer to Christmas, think about it. These resin molds, oh my goodness, they make the most beautiful Christmas ornaments. And if you make them out of resin, they last forever. But I'm gluing that lapel pin on with Tight Bond glue. And here's all of our projects today. The first vignette I've set up for someone who likes to crochet or knit. So inside of the lap desk, you may use a journal where you're writing about the different projects that you've worked on before. The tote would be where you put your needles and your scissors and maybe some reading glasses if you're like me and you need glasses to see up close. And look at this old window that I put a really large transfer from that transfer set. And there's my little lapel pin. Do you like it? Do you not like it? It's okay. I still haven't decided if I like it a whole bunch. But I was not going to waste that transfer. And then my basket is for my yarn. And then I've got like a little cup, because you might need to have a little cup of tea while you're crocheting. The next vignette is for maybe your little center you might have for in the morning when you do your devotions. You've got your devotion book, highlighters, markers, your glasses. You might use the basket to put like different Bible or Bible commentaries in. And then the lap desk, you could use that and maybe put your another Bible or your prayer journal in it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.